The giant hall was full of fear. Creatures from 43 different worlds sat in their special chairs, but nobody felt safe. The air itself seemed heavy with worry. At the front of the room, a tall lizard-like being stood on two legs. His name was Krelthos, and he was from the Vortek Empire. His yellow eyes looked at everyone like a hungry wolf looking at sheep. "Listen well," Krelthos said in a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. "My empire has taken 17 star systems in just 3 years. We destroyed their armies. We took their planets. We made their people our slaves." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Now it is your turn to choose." The council speaker was a tall being made of living crystal. Her name was Thexera, and light moved through her body like water. She was shaking, and everyone could see it. What do you want from us?" she asked. Krelthos laughed. It was not a nice sound. Simple. "Give us 70% of all your warships. Give us control of your armies. Do this and we will let you live. We will let you serve the great Vorthak Empire." He paused and looked around the room. "Refuse and we will burn your worlds. We will kill your people, just like we did to the others." On the big screens around the room, pictures showed what happened to worlds that said no to the Vorthak. Cities turned to ash, ships broken into pieces floating in space, entire planets stripped of everything valuable, left as dead rocks spinning in the dark. A small blue creature with 6 arms raised one of them. "But surely we can talk about this. Find a peaceful way." "Peace?" Krelthos stepped forward, and his heavy boots made loud sounds on the floor. "Peace is what the weak beg for when they cannot fight. We tried peace with the Kepler colonies. They talked and talked and talked." His voice got louder. "So we stopped listening and started burning." Another delegate, this one looking like a giant butterfly with rainbow wings, spoke up. "Our combined fleets could resist you. Together we are strong. Together you are nothing." Krelthos roared. "Do you want to see why?" He pressed something on his arm and the big screens changed. Now they showed the Vorthak war fleet. Hundreds of ships that looked alive, with metal and flesh mixed together. "Our ships heal themselves when you hurt them. Our weapons learn how to break through any defense. We have fought your best fighters. We have beaten your strongest warriors. You have nothing that can stop us." The room became very quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing. The math was simple and terrible. Even if all 43 worlds worked together, they could not win. The Vorthak ships were too strong, too smart, too many. Thexera's crystal body was shaking more now. How long do we have to decide?" "One day," Krelthos said. "Tomorrow, when your sun reaches the middle of the sky, you will vote. Choose to serve or choose to die. It matters nothing to us." In the back corner of the Great Hall, there was a small booth that nobody looked at anymore. It was dark inside, and it had been dark for 200 years. A small sign on the front said, "Terran Federation Status Voluntary Cryogenic Preservation." Most of the younger delegates did not even know what it meant. The older ones remembered stories about the humans, but those were old stories from long ago. The humans had been a young race when they joined the council. They were not very advanced compared to the older species. They had small ships and simple weapons, but they fought hard in something called the Titan Wars, a terrible conflict that almost destroyed their homeworld. After the war ended, they made a strange choice. They said they needed time to heal and think. They put their whole race to sleep in special machines and said they would wake up when they were ready. That was 200 years ago. Most people forgot about them, but as Krelthos continued to threaten the council, something changed in the human booth. Deep inside the dark space, a tiny blue light started to blink. It was so small that nobody saw it. But far away, on a moon circling the human world called Earth, machines that had been sleeping for 2 centuries began to wake up. The debate in the council continued. Some delegates wanted to fight. Others wanted to run away to far galaxies. But most knew the truth. They had no good choices. The Vorthak were too strong. "We need a miracle," whispered a delegate who looked like a walking tree. "Miracles are for children's stories," said another who resembled a floating jellyfish. "We have only reality, and reality says we must surrender." Krelthos heard them and laughed again. "Yes, surrender. It is the only smart choice. We have conquered species much stronger than you. We have destroyed fleets much larger than yours. What could possibly save you now?" None of them noticed that the blue light in the human booth was blinking faster now. None of them saw the small screens inside starting to turn on, and none of them heard the very quiet sound of machines beginning to hum with power. Far away in the cold space around Earth, computers that had been waiting for 200 years were finally getting the message they had been programmed to watch for. The message was simple. The galaxy was in danger and peaceful solutions had failed. It was time to wake up the humans. But in the council hall, the fear continued. Delegates talked in small groups, trying to find hope where there was none. Some prayed to their gods. Others sent messages to their homeworlds, telling their people to prepare for the worst. Krelthos watched it all with satisfaction. This was how it always went. First came the threats, then came the fear, then came the begging, and finally came the surrender. It was a pattern he had seen 17 times before. Tomorrow, he announced to the room, you will make the smart choice. You will choose to live as servants rather than die as fools. The Vorthak Empire always wins. As the delegates slowly left the hall, their heads hanging low with defeat, the human booth remained dark and silent. But the blue light kept blinking faster and faster like a heartbeat getting ready for action. The council thought they had no hope. They thought they had no choice but to surrender to the Vorthak Empire. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Deep under the surface of Earth's moon, something was happening that had not happened for 200 years. In a huge underground facility called Sanctuary Station, 10,000 sleeping pods began to hum with new life. White mist poured out as the first pod opened with a soft hiss. Inside was a man named Lee Do-hyun. He had been asleep for 2 centuries, but his body looked exactly the same as the day he went to sleep. That was the magic of the cryo chambers. They stopped time for the people inside them. Lee's eyes opened slowly, glowing with a blue light from the computer parts built into them. He was a captain in the Terran Federation Marines, and he was the first human to wake up. Around him, more pods were opening. White mist filled the air as thousands of people began to wake up after their long sleep. There was Admiral Park Soo-jin, whose silver hair now had streaks of gray. There was Chief Engineer Kim Min-ho, whose hands were already reaching for tools that were not there. There was Dr. Yoon Ji-woo, a scientist who studied alien life forms. And there was Choi Yoon-bi, who used to talk to other species for the human government. A computer voice spoke to them. It was called Aegis, and it had been watching over them while they slept. Welcome back, it said in a calm voice. You have been in cryosleep for 203 years, 4 months, and 16 days. Lee sat up slowly, feeling strange after such a long sleep. His throat was dry and his voice came out like a whisper. Status report. Why did you wake us up? The galaxy is in danger, Aegis replied. A species called the Vorthak Empire has conquered 17 star systems. They are threatening the Galactic Council. Based on your original programming, this situation meets all criteria for awakening the Terran Federation. Dr. Yoon put her hand to her head as Aegis began downloading information directly into her brain. It was like watching 200 years of history in fast forward. She saw the rise of the Vorthak Empire. She saw their biomechanical ships that could heal themselves and learn from every battle. She saw worlds burning and species being enslaved. Show me everything about these Vorthak, she said, her voice getting stronger. Information flowed across holographic screens all around them. The Vorthak were reptile-like creatures who had mixed their bodies with machines. Their ships were alive in some ways, made of both metal and living tissue. They could adapt to any attack and grow stronger from every battle. Admiral Park studied the tactical displays with the eye of someone who had fought in many wars. She was older now, with lines on her face that had not been there before the long sleep, but her mind was still sharp. Their ships use biomechanical technology, she said slowly. Living computers running their systems. Chief Engineer Kim was looking at the same information, but his eyes were bright with excitement instead of worry. Ma'am, this is incredible. Their entire fleet is based on neural networks. Organic brain tissue connected to their computers. He turned to face the others and he was smiling. They've made themselves vulnerable to neural disruption warfare. Explain, Admiral Park ordered. Kim's fingers danced over the control screens, bringing up more detailed information. Look at this. Their ships don't just have computers, they have brains. Living, thinking brains that control everything. But brains can be confused. Brains can be overloaded. Brains can be made to turn against themselves. Dr. Yoon was nodding as she understood what Kim was thinking. During our sleep, did our research teams continue working on neural disruption technology? Aegis answered immediately. Yes, Dr. Yoon. All automated research continued as programmed. I have complete schematics for neural disruption fields, quantum communication arrays, and spacefold drive systems. All technologies were completed during your sleep period. Choyunbi was watching feeds from the Galactic Council chambers, where the vote on surrender was being prepared. The Council is meeting tomorrow to decide whether to give in to the Vorthak demands. We need to time our return perfectly. Lee stood up from his pod, testing his legs. Even after 200 years of sleep, the human body was ready for action thanks to the advanced cryo technology. How long to get our people fully awakened and briefed? All essential personnel can be awakened within 6 hours, Aegis reported. Full briefing and equipment preparation will take an additional 12 hours. Admiral Park was studying star charts, looking at the positions of both the Vorthak fleets and the Council worlds. The Vorthak think they're the apex predators of the galaxy, she said quietly. They've never met humans who have had 200 years to think about war. Around them, more and more humans were waking up. Engineers, soldiers, scientists, diplomats. All the people who had volunteered to sleep until the galaxy needed them again. They had gone to sleep after the devastating Titan Wars, when Earth was badly damaged and humanity was tired of fighting. But they had made a promise before they slept. If the galaxy was ever in real danger, they would wake up and help. Kim was pulling up files on human military technology. Look at this, he said with growing excitement. While we slept, our automated factories never stopped working. We have ships the galaxy has never seen. Weapons based on principles most species don't even understand yet. Dr. Yoon was reviewing the medical files on the Vorthak physiology. Their biomechanical nature is both their strength and their weakness. They heal quickly, but they also depend completely on the neural connections between their organic and mechanical parts. Which means, Kim said, that if we disrupt those neural connections, their ships become floating scrap metal, Admiral Park finished. Their weapons stop working. Their healing systems fail. Choi was still monitoring the council feeds. The fear in that chamber is overwhelming. These species have never faced anything like the Vorthak before. They don't know how to fight an enemy that adapts to everything they do. Lee walked over to look at the tactical displays showing the Vorthak fleet positions. They've made one critical mistake, he said. They think sleeping means dead. They think absent means gone forever. Humans don't make that mistake, Admiral Park said. We know the difference between gone and waiting. Aegis chimed in with an update. Captain Lee, I should inform you that the Vorthak have sent scouts to observe Earth. They believe it is an empty world with only automated systems. Kim laughed, and it was not a nice sound. Let them think that. Let them think we're helpless. Dr. Yoon was reviewing the psychological profiles of the Vorthak leadership. They're aggressive predators who have never met real resistance. Every species they've conquered submitted quickly once they demonstrated their power. Because those species were trying to minimize losses, Choi observed. They were trying to save lives by surrendering quickly. Noble, said Admiral Park, but not effective against predators. Predators only understand one language. Lee nodded grimly. Overwhelming force applied with perfect precision. Around them, the awakening process continued. Thousands of humans were emerging from their long sleep, each one being briefed on the current situation. Engineers were reviewing schematics for ships that had been built while they slept. Soldiers were checking weapons that had been improved by 2 centuries of automated research. Scientists were studying data on enemy species and technologies. But the most important awakening was happening in the minds of the humans themselves. They had gone to sleep as a species tired of war, hoping for peace. They were waking up to find that peace had failed, and that the galaxy was counting on them to do what they did best. Time to remind the galaxy, Admiral Park said quietly, why humans are the most dangerous species when they're properly motivated. The awakening was complete. Humanity was back. The council chamber fell completely silent. For the first time in 200 years, the blast doors of the human observation booth were opening. Everyone turned to stare as the thick metal doors slid apart with a deep rumbling sound. Out stepped a woman in a crisp blue uniform that looked brand new. Her name was Han Mirai, and she was the new human ambassador to the Galactic Council. Her black hair was pulled back neatly and her dark eyes looked calm and confident. She walked to the front of the human booth like she owned the place. Krelthos, the big Vorthak leader, turned his massive head to look at her. His yellow eyes were full of confusion. What is this trick? He growled. The humans have been dead for many cycles, sleeping Ambassador Han corrected him, her voice clear and strong. There is a big difference between sleeping and being dead. She touched a button on her uniform, and suddenly every creature in the room could understand her words in their own language. The Terran Federation formally requests to return to active status in the Galactic Council. Council Speaker Thexara's crystal body was vibrating with nervous energy. Light was dancing through her like she was scared and excited at the same time. Ambassador Han, we welcome humanity's return, but the current crisis is exactly why we are here, Han interrupted smoothly. She looked around the room at all the frightened faces. We have been watching the situation develop. The Vorthak Empire has certainly been busy. Krelthos stood up to his full height of 3 meters. His biomechanical armor made whirring and clicking sounds as he moved. Humans, he said with a laugh that sounded like grinding metal. I remember the old stories about your species. You were barely able to travel between stars when you went into hiding. You have no fleet, no armies, nothing but empty words. Han's smile was cold as ice. You are right about one thing, we have no fleet. She paused, letting that sink in. Around the room, delegates looked at each other with confusion and disappointment. Then Han continued, we have something much better. We have angry humans who have had 2 centuries to think about what we would do differently next time. The chamber erupted with nervous chatter. Species representatives were talking to each other in dozens of different languages, trying to understand what the human was saying. The Vorthak delegation looked at each other, not sure whether to laugh or be worried. The Federation offers an alternative to surrender, Han announced loudly, making everyone quiet down. Give us 3 standard days and we will solve the Vorthak problem permanently. This time Krelthos did laugh, long and loud. The sound echoed through the chamber like rocks falling down a mountain. 3 days? Our war fleet will reach your pathetic Earth in 2 days. You will be nothing but space dust floating in the void. We are counting on it, Han replied, and her smile never changed. A delegate who looked like a giant octopus with silver skin raised several arms. Ambassador Han, with respect, how can your species help us? You have been gone for 200 years. The galaxy has changed. Technology has advanced. Has it? Han asked. She touched another button on her uniform, and holographic displays appeared in the air around her. They showed technical diagrams that made no sense to most of the watching aliens. These are schematics for neural disruption fields, quantum communication arrays, and spacefold drive systems. All human technology. Dr. Yunjiwu's voice came through Han's communicator, speaking to the entire chamber. While humanity slept, our automated research systems never stopped working. We continued to develop new technologies, new weapons, new ways of thinking about warfare. A small blue creature with multiple eyes spoke up. But the Vorthak ships adapt to everything. They learn from every attack and become stronger. How can you fight something that becomes immune to your weapons? Han's smile became wider. That is their greatest strength, yes, but it is also their greatest weakness. You see, their ships do not just adapt, they think. They have living brains controlling their systems. Chief Engineer Kim Minho's voice joined the conversation through the communicator. Biomechanical neural networks. Very impressive technology. Very vulnerable to the right kind of interference. Krelthos was starting to look less confident. You speak of theories and possibilities. We deal in realities. Our fleets have conquered 17 star systems. Our weapons have destroyed every enemy we have faced. Because you have been fighting species who think like you do. Han said calmly. Species who fight in predictable ways. Species who try to minimize their losses. She stepped forward, and suddenly she did not look calm anymore. She looked dangerous. You have never fought humans who have been given time to prepare. Admiral Park Soo-jin's voice came through the communicator, and it was the voice of someone who had commanded fleets in real wars. The Vorthak make the same mistake that many aggressive species make. They assume that because we choose peace, we are not capable of war. Captain Lee Do-hyun added his own voice. They assume that because we were quiet, we were weak. They assume that because we slept, we were helpless. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the Vorthak delegation was listening carefully. Here is what will happen, Han said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. The Vorthak fleet will arrive at Earth in 2 days, expecting to find a defenseless world. They will find something else entirely. What will they find? Asked Thexara, her crystal voice barely a whisper. They will find out why humans are the only species that voluntarily goes to sleep when they are angry, Han replied. Because we know that revenge is a dish best served cold, and we have had 200 years to let ours get very Very cold. Krelthos tried to look confident, but there was something in the human's voice that made him nervous. Empty threats from a species with no ships, no weapons, no what? Han interrupted. No fear? You are right about that. We have no fear of you at all. She activated another hologram, this one showing the Sol system where Earth was located. Your scouts have reported that Earth appears to have only automated mining operations and old space stations. They are correct, that is exactly what it appears to have. The meaning of her words was clear, and Krelthos felt something he had not felt in many years. Doubt. The vote tomorrow is unnecessary, Han continued. In 3 days, the Vorthak Empire will no longer be a threat to anyone. The Council can return to the business of peaceful cooperation. And if you fail, asked a delegate who looked like a walking tree. Han's expression became very serious. We will not fail. Failure is not something humans do well. She looked directly at Krelthos. Your empire made one fatal mistake. You woke us up. As the session ended and delegates began to leave, many of them stopped by the human booth to speak with Han. They wanted to know more about human plans, human technology, human confidence. But Han just smiled and said the same thing to all of them. In 3 days, you will understand everything. The Vorthak delegation left quickly, and Krelthos was already sending urgent messages to his fleet commanders. Something about the human's confidence worried him. But what could one small species do against the might of the Vorthak Empire? He was about to find out. The Vorthak war fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a swarm of metal predators. There were 300 ships, each one a mixture of living tissue and advanced technology. They pulsed with bioluminescent lights as their organic computers scanned for threats. Fleet Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical displays with his reptilian eyes. He was expecting to see desperate human ships trying to defend their homeworld. Instead, he saw almost nothing. Report, he ordered his tactical officer, a smaller Vorthak with cybernetic implants covering half his skull. Scans show minimal activity around the third planet, the officer replied. Some orbital stations that appear to be very old. Mining operations on various asteroids. No warships detected anywhere in the system. Vextar's mouth curved in what passed for a smile among his species. Cowards. They are hiding on their planet like insects under a rock. Begin planetary bombardment protocols. We will burn their cities from orbit. As the Vorthak fleet moved deeper into the Sol system heading toward Earth, they remained completely unaware of the changes happening around them. What they thought were simple mining operations on distant asteroids were actually sophisticated sensor networks. Every Vorthak ship was being tracked, studied, and targeted. On the surface of Earth's moon, Captain Lee Do-yun watched the enemy fleet approach from what appeared to be just another mining facility. But beneath the thin disguise, Sanctuary Base was the most advanced military command center in the galaxy. Around him, human officers tracked every enemy ship with cold precision. All stations, this is Sanctuary Command. Lee broadcast on encrypted channels that the Vorthak could not detect. The fish have entered the barrel. Begin Operation Lazarus. Throughout the Sol system, things that had looked harmless suddenly revealed their true nature. Asteroid mining platforms shed their camouflage, unfolding like deadly metal flowers to expose massive fusion cannons. Space stations that seemed old and abandoned suddenly came alive with weapons. Systems that had been hidden for 2 centuries. But the real surprise was Earth itself, the planet's surface, erupted with launches as thousands of sleek black ships rose from hidden bases. These were not the bulky, slow warships that the galaxy was used to seeing. These ships moved like living things, bending space around them as they flew. What is this? Vextar roared as his sensors suddenly detected the massive fleet rising from Earth. Where did these ships come from? His tactical officer was frantically working at his console, trying to make sense of the readings. Sir, I am detecting over 5,000 human vessels. They are using some kind of spacefold technology I have never seen before. The lead human ship was called the New Soul, and Admiral Park Soo-jin stood on its bridge like an ancient warrior queen. Her silver hair was pulled back in a military style, and her eyes held the cold fire of someone who had spent 2 centuries planning for this moment. All ships. This is Admiral Park, she broadcast to the human fleet. Neural disruption fields are ready. Target the biomechanical systems of all enemy vessels. Chief Engineer Kim Minho was at his station aboard the New Soul, his hands dancing over controls that activated technology the galaxy had never seen. Neural disruptors online, Admiral. The Vorthak are about to discover what happens when you make ships that think. The neural disruption fields activated all at once, invisible waves of energy that reached out across space to touch every Vorthak ship. The effect was immediate and devastating. Vorthak vessels that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly began to wobble and drift. Their biomechanical systems, so proud of their ability to adapt and learn, found themselves overwhelmed by cascading feedback loops. The living brains that controlled their ships began receiving conflicting signals, becoming confused and disoriented. "Sir," the tactical officer on Vextar's flagship was shouting, "our systems are malfunctioning. The bioneural networks are reporting massive interference." Around them, Vorthak ships began to turn on each other as their confused organic computers misidentified friend from foe. Ships that should have been working together started firing at their own allies. "Impossible," Vextar snarled. "Our technology adapts to everything. Our ships learn and overcome." Admiral Park's voice came through on open channels, calm and professional. "Your ships do learn, Commander. Unfortunately for you, we taught them the wrong lessons." Dr. Yunjiwoo was monitoring the neural disruption from her position on the science vessel Kepler's Dream. The biomechanical interfaces are overloading exactly as predicted. Their adaptive systems are trying to process too much contradictory information. The human fleet moved forward with precision that spoke of centuries of planning. Each ship knew exactly where to be and what to do. They had practiced this battle in simulations for 200 years, and now they executed it perfectly. "Weapons free," Admiral Park ordered. "Show them what human engineering looks like." The human ships opened fire, but not with the crude energy weapons or projectiles that most galactic species used. Instead, they fired quantum disruption beams that simply made matter forget how to hold itself together. Vorthak ships did not explode, they just stopped existing. "This is impossible," Vextar screamed as he watched his fleet being systematically destroyed. "Our armor regenerates. Our ships heal themselves. Only if they remember how," came Kim's voice over the comm. "Right now your ships cannot remember anything at all." The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted only 3 hours. The Vorthak fleet that had conquered 17 star systems was reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Not a single human ship was even scratched. Throughout the Sol system, human pilots were actually complaining over the comm channels. "That was too easy," one said. "I was hoping for more of a challenge." 200 years of preparation for 3 hours of work, another pilot added. "I feel like we were showing off." Admiral Park's response was dry. "Save the showing off for the victory parade. We have work to do." As the last Vorthak ship was destroyed, escape pods began launching. The humans carefully collected them all, including the one containing Fleet Commander Vextar. They would be prisoners, not casualties. Captain Lee opened a channel to the Galactic Council. "Council Speaker Thexara, this is Captain Lee Do-hyun of the Terran Federation. The Vorthak fleet has been neutralized. No human casualties reported." The response from the council chamber was stunned silence, followed by Thexara's crystal voice. "In 3 hours? You destroyed their entire fleet in 3 hours?" "Actually," Kim's voice cut in cheerfully, "it was 2 hours and 47 minutes. We rounded up for the official report." Dr. Yoon was already analyzing the wreckage. "Admiral, the neural disruption technology worked even better than our models predicted. The biomechanical systems were completely helpless against quantum-level interference." Admiral Park nodded with satisfaction. "Inform all human vessels to begin establishing defensive positions throughout the galaxy. It is time to make sure this never happens again." As the human fleet dispersed to take up positions around various star systems, the galaxy began to understand that everything had changed. The balance of power had not just shifted, it had been completely rewritten. The Vorthak Empire, which had seemed unstoppable just hours before, was now just a memory and a pile of scrap metal floating in space, and the humans, who had been thought dead for 2 centuries, were now clearly the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. 6 hours after the battle ended, the Galactic Council chamber was packed with representatives from every known species. They had come to see the recordings of what happened in the Sol system, and none of them could believe what they were watching. The massive screens showed the Vorthak fleet entering human space with confidence, expecting an easy victory. Then came the moment when thousands of human ships appeared from nowhere, moving faster than anything the galaxy had seen before. The neural disruption fields activated, and the mighty Vorthak fleet simply fell apart. Council Speaker Thexara's crystal body was glowing brighter than usual, a sign that she was very excited or very scared. 3 hours, she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. The most powerful military force in known history was defeated in 3 hours. At the front of the chamber, former Fleet Commander Vextar knelt in biomechanical restraints. His yellow eyes were no longer proud and confident. Instead, they showed the confusion of a predator who had discovered he was actually prey. Ambassador Han Mirai stood at the human booth, looking exactly as calm as she had 3 days ago. "The demonstration is complete," she said simply. "The Vorthak Empire no longer exists as a military threat." A delegate who looked like a giant insect raised one of his arms. "Ambassador Han, how did humanity develop such advanced technology in only 3 days?" Han's smile was patient, like a teacher explaining something to a child. "We did not develop it in 3 days. We developed it over 2 centuries. The neural disruption technology, the spacefold drive systems, the quantum targeting arrays. All of these were created while we slept." "But how?" asked the representative from the Aquarian depths, a blue creature that lived underwater. "How did you know what to build? How did you know what enemies you would face?" Dr. Yoon Jiwoo appeared on the holographic projector, speaking from her laboratory ship. "We did not know what specific enemies we would face," she explained. "But we knew that aggressive species would eventually appear, so we prepared for every possibility." Chief Engineer Kim joined the hologram, grinning with the excitement of someone who loved to solve difficult problems. The key was understanding that most aggressive species follow similar patterns. They rely on superior technology, superior numbers, or superior adaptation, so we built counters for all 3 approaches. "And the neural disruption technology?" asked Thexara. "Humanity's greatest weapon," Han replied, "is boredom." The entire chamber fell silent. Nobody understood what she meant. Kim laughed and explained, "Give a human enough time with nothing to do, and they will find increasingly creative ways to solve problems they do not even have yet. We spent 2 centuries thinking about war, about enemies, about every possible threat." Dr. Yoon nodded. "While other species focused on trade, diplomacy, and cultural development during our absence, humans focused on one question: what would we do if the galaxy was in danger and we were the only ones who could help?" Captain Lee Doyun appeared on the hologram, speaking from the bridge of his ship. The answer was simple: we would be ready for anything. Admiral Park joined the conversation from the New Sol. "The Terran Federation does not seek to replace the Vorthak as galactic rulers. We have no interest in conquest or empire building. We are here for one reason only: to make sure this kind of threat never succeeds again." She activated new displays that showed technical specifications for human technology: neural disruption fields, quantum communication networks, adaptive defense platforms. All of this technology will be freely shared with any council member who agrees to the new Terran Security Accords. Choi Yunbi, the human diplomatic director, began explaining the accords to the assembled delegates. They were surprisingly simple and reasonable. No territorial demands, no tribute payments, no submission to human authority. Just one basic principle: aggressive expansion against peaceful species would be met with immediate and overwhelming response. "The accords are voluntary," Choi explained. "Any species can choose not to sign them, but only signatories will receive human military protection and advanced technology." A small furry creature that looked like a teddy bear raised its paw. "What about species that are naturally aggressive but do not threaten others?" "Being aggressive is not a crime," Han replied. "Attacking peaceful species is. The humans have no problem with warriors who fight each other. We only intervene when the strong prey upon the weak." Vextar, still kneeling in his restraints, finally spoke. "You cannot control the entire galaxy with one fleet, no matter how advanced." Admiral Park's image turned to look at him. "You are correct. One fleet cannot control the galaxy." She paused, and her expression became very serious. "That is why we built 1,000 fleets." The chamber erupted in shocked voices as the implications sank in. The human fleet that had destroyed the Vorthak was not humanity's only military force. It was just one of many. "How many ships do you have?" whispered Thexara. Kim answered cheerfully. "We built approximately 10 million vessels during our sleep period. Most of them are automated. But all of them are equipped with the same technology you just witnessed. Dr. Yoon added, "We also established manufacturing facilities throughout the galaxy, hidden bases that can produce more ships as needed. We learned from our history that being strong once is not enough. You must stay strong." The delegates looked around at each other with a mixture of awe and fear. They were beginning to understand that humanity had not just returned to the galaxy, they had become its guardian, whether anyone wanted them to be or not. "Why?" asked the insect-like delegate. "Why go to all this trouble for species you barely know?" Captain Lee answered simply. "Because we remember what it was like to be weak. We remember what it was like to be threatened by forces beyond our control. We decided that no species should have to face that alone." Admiral Park's final words carried the weight of absolute certainty. The galaxy has been peaceful for too long. Species have forgotten that safety is not a right. It is something that must be protected. Humanity slept for 2 centuries, but we never stopped dreaming of ways to protect what matters. As the human fleet took positions throughout the galaxy, establishing defensive networks and rapid response bases, every species began to understand the new reality. The age of aggressive empires was over. The age of enforced peace had begun. The surviving Vorthak were relocated to designated systems under human supervision, where they would learn to live peacefully or remain isolated from the rest of the galaxy. They became a living reminder that some mistakes cannot be undone. In the years that followed, the phrase, "Do not wake the humans," became the galaxy's most effective deterrent against aggressive expansion. Trade flourished. Scientific cooperation reached new heights. Wars between species became almost extinct. And through it all, the humans maintained their watch, quiet guardians who preferred to remain in the background. They had learned the most important lesson of all. The best way to keep the peace was to be so overwhelmingly prepared for war that nobody wanted to start one. The galaxy was safe, and it would remain safe as long as humanity was watching. After all, everyone now knew that humans were remarkably creative when they were bored, and absolutely terrifying when they were motivated. And nothing motivated humans quite like seeing bullies pick on those who could not defend themselves.